Welcome to Count Me In. I'm your host, Adam Larson. In today's episode, I'm joined by Carol Sargent, Associate Professor of Accounting at Mercer University, and a seasoned mentor with a wealth of experience in both industry and academia. Together, we dive into the ins and outs of mentoring, exploring how roles of a mentor and mentee differ depending on your environment, and what it really takes to build meaningful, effective mentoring relationships. Carol shares practical advice on seeking out mentors, building trust, and navigating through those professional moments like ethical dilemmas where a good mentor makes all the difference. Whether you're just starting out or looking to pay it forward as a mentor yourself, this episode offers wisdom on developing emotional intelligence, becoming a better leader, and supporting those around you. Tune in for a thought-provoking and motivating conversation that might just inspire you to take your own mentoring journey to the next level. Well, Carol, I just want to welcome you to the Count Me In podcast. I'm excited today to be talking with you about being a mentor and being a mentee. And I figure we could start our conversation by how does the experience of being a mentor or mentee differ between industry and academia? Because you've done it in both places. You've done it when you're in industry, you've done it when you're in academia. And maybe there some lessons we can learn just to kind of get our feet wet here.
Right. So there are differences, pretty big differences, and that's usually the time frame. In industry, you might be working with somebody for years. They might have connected with you as a new hire or even during the recruiting process. And so you're with them as they progress through the organization, or maybe they leave the organization. Now they're in a different organization, but they kept up with you. In academia, you may only have them for a semester or maybe 2 semesters, or at most for 2 or 3 years, and then they leave. So you have less time to percolate. Students sometimes keep up with you afterwards and you can mentor after graduation, but that's less likely than across a more professional career. My professional colleagues would keep up with me even after they went to other organizations, but students feel less likely to do that. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're right. It is a completely different environments, and so when you're a mentor in college, you're like, I'm excited about doing things, and you're trying to move in your career. You're trying to learn things quickly, and in a career, it's a different. And why do you think a lot of people are resistant to getting mentors, especially when you're a professional?
I don't know that people are resistant to getting mentors. I think they might be where you and I were just talking, in that it takes a little bit of energy to find one.
Yeah.
And the gold standard is to have an internal mentee in your organization, but also an external one that's independent of the organization. And you have to be either very lucky or intentional, or maybe
Hmm.
both, to have
Yeah,
that idea.
for sure. So let's start with from the perspective of a mentee. What do you think? What are qualities you should look for in a mentor? Let's say you're a young professional, you just came out of college, you just got your CMA or working towards your CMA, and what are some qualities that you think, hey, this is an impactful mentor? And I know each person is different, but what are there certain qualities that we should all be looking for?
So one who's open to it, right? One who's willing to give you a little bit of time. And that's on the mentee to be interesting, right? To ask 1 or 2 interesting questions that'll catch the attention of a mentor. And so then they'll begin a conversation and say, hey, are you open to following up on this, maybe for coffee, or maybe I'll
Hmm.
stop by after work and we can go for a walk and go into that topic. So if a mentee comes in with a question or 2 to sort of prompt, I'm curious about this thing, and maybe we talk for a few minutes, are you open to following up? And then that's how you can maybe get one launched.
Hmm.
I mean, it does take a little bit of luck and a little bit of connection, because you have to build up that trust. You have to build up that mutual desire to connect and to pay it forward, or to make the investment. So there has to be some chemistry.
Yeah, it's almost like a mentor mentee relationship is like it's very similar to like romantic relationship. If there's no chemistry, how can you grow and move forward in romance? Sometimes that's what people say, is they're looking for chemistry.
Sure that it's chemistry in that context, maybe in terms of shared values or
Okay.
shared interests or shared understanding of how it would be better if I took my difficult topics to
Hmm.
somebody who's maybe done other difficult topics.
Yeah,
So it's there's a respect kind of chemistry, that
that
I
makes sense.
respect you for wanting to know, to bring in your problems, and I respect you to take my problems seriously and give me multiple viewpoints without bossing me around, without judging me. So not everybody can do that.
Yeah, not everybody can. If you're a mentee and you want to make sure that your time is effective, are there certain things or practices that you should be looking to do? Like, hey, I want to make sure I'm doing these things to make sure that it's worth my time. Because, like you said, you have to put some effort in even to find somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you have to try it, right? You have to test it.
Yeah.
You have to have that initial conversation, ask those initial questions, and it might take 10 before you find one that clicks, or somebody who's willing to spend a little bit of time. Doesn't take a lot of time to have a mentor-mentee relationship. Maybe you only have coffee once a quarter. Maybe
Hmm.
it's usually more often in the beginning, and then twice a year is enough. And then there might be an emergency phone call in between those times that, this thing just happened and I don't know how to address this. What thoughts do you have? And if they've gotten to know you, then they can give you more context, personal advice as opposed to generic advice. I mean, you can go get a book on any one topic and get generic advice, but what about you, your concerns, your constraints, your strengths or weaknesses in that setting? How would you address this?
Yeah. So, what do you think the when you're looking at mentors and mentees? Is it always gonna be and maybe end up being a friendship that develops, or does it have to be a friendship? Like, where does that balance and those things lie? Because I know you've had a lot of different experiences with mentors and mentees.
Mhm. Um, yeah, I mean, it's not unusual to have a friendship develop,
Mhm,
especially if you do it over several years. But it doesn't have to be a friendship. It can be a professional relationship.
mhm,
Sometimes there's a great power difference between the mentor might be the partner in charge in the New York office, and the mentee might be a new hire. And boy, they're living in completely different worlds, and they're not likely to, have sort of that friendship equal relationship.
mhm.
Certainly friendly,
Yeah,
friendly. Some relationships, I'm in one right now that's 40 years old. Okay, terrific. But some of them maybe only lasted 8 or 4, or like the
mhm,
students, maybe 2 years. So sometimes you don't know. You have to give the gift and then you don't know what the return is going to be. You have to, for both of you, right?
mhm.
You have to make a decision. I'm going to try it.
Do you think that formal mentoring programs are more effective than just or ones that happen organically? Like, what do you think
Yes.
the difference is there?
That's a great question. Many of the organizations, not all, but many of them gave me an official, both as a mentor and mentee, gave me an official relationship. This is your mentor. You're a new hire in this firm, and here is so and so is your mentor. And you're required to meet with your mentor at least once a year. And so you would sit down and meet with the mentor. In my organization right now, we have that you're assigned a mentor when you're hired. So that's not unusual. Um, when it's an obligation, it's a different dynamic.
Mm,
So you could be lucky. None of my officially assigned mentors ever turned out to be a mentor to me.
mm,
Officially assigned mentees sometimes turned out to be mentees for me, but not all the time. I would say 10% at most, just because they're not carefully constructed. They're done out of convenience, or, you're the first on the list, you're assigned to so, somebody hasn't spent a lot of time figuring out, well, you're an extrovert, or you have this situation, or you have whatever it is, right? Whatever that magical thing is. Sometimes it's usually I asked a question. So
mhm,
I was a new hire. I'm getting off the elevator. A partner said something to me. I asked a question and they're like, that's a good question. We should talk. As a mentee, if you want to be mentored, I think if you have over 50 questions, they're going to run, right? Because you look too needy. But a good couple of questions in your hip pocket all the time is a really good idea. Ones you really care about and you've been wondering about. Like, what do you do with a nonprofit client? How do you know if they're successful? Because profits are like this way to figure out if things are going well, but
yeah,
they're always zero. You're a nonprofit. And that was the question I had in the elevator with this particular person who ended up being a very long term mentor of me and saved my family so many times, which a good mentor will do.
yeah. Well, it's funny you mentioned that saving your fanny a number of times. What are some advice you give to mentors, helping to navigate like ethical dilemmas in the workplace? It's always
Oh,
good to have that
man.
trusting soundboard, but like if you're in a high pressure environment and situation, what are some ways that mentors can help mentees navigate those
Yeah.
waters? Because it's never
Or
easy.
just all of us in the finance profession, really, as stewards. So I unfortunately have to tell you that every organization that I've been And every single one, somebody has asked me to do the wrong thing. So you would think it would be really unusual, but it's not. So as a mentor, what I want to do is normalize that. People are going to ask you to do the wrong thing. And it's usually not because they're bad people, but because they have a problem. They have some kind
Yeah.
of problem. And the easy way to do that is let's reclassify this so we're not in violation of the covenants on the bank. And we'll get through this. And 2 days later, you can reverse it. Nobody will be hurt. And of course, they're just in a panic, right? So they're not really trying to do the wrong thing. That just looks like an easy way to solve the problem. And so what I want to do with a mentee is normalize it, say, this is going to happen. It's probably going to happen, may happen multiple times. So what are your options, right? So one of the options should not be do the thing, right? So you want to dig deeper. What is actually the problem we're trying to solve here? We're in violation of the covenant with the bank. Would it be okay with you if I call the bank and get a 90-day reprieve on that, telling them the story? Oh, yeah, okay. But you got to do it by tomorrow. No problem. Doing it right now. Right? So you give them some other solution to the problem. You
Hmm.
don't turn them into the bad guy. One of the great things that somebody told me, pull out of your pocket immediately and go, oh, I would love to do that. Right. So you feel their pain, right? You're under some kind of pressure. You got some sort of problem. You can solve the problem easily by doing this thing that you should do. So you feel their pain. I'd love to do that. What actually is the problem? What are the other ways we can address it?
Hmm.
So if you're familiar with the fraud triangle, fraud can only happen if there are three elements present. One is pressure. Nobody really does fraud if they're not under some sort of pressure. They have to have the ability to pull it off. And often that financial professional is that one in charge of the controls that says boundary issue. You can't just play with the financial statements to solve your problem. So we have to solve your problem in another way, but we don't have to turn you into the villain. There are organizations where there's just a lot going on, in which case you have to get out of the polluted pond. But most of the time, just somebody's in a panic and
Hmm.
they think you can solve their problem. They really haven't thought deeply about the fact that you're completely ruining the culture, and all of a sudden doing the wrong thing is the way to solve problems around here. And now you've got yourself a big mess. So, and then you get your stuff like Enron happening. So that's not a good way to run a world. And it's a bad thing for the profession. But everybody, everywhere that I've gone has asked me to do something wrong at least one time. And I feel their pain. Wouldn't that be great if I could do that? But I can't. So anyway, what is the actual problem? And of course, then help them solve the problem. And then, of course, they come to you and say, they start coming to you and say, I have a problem, right? And then they want to solve the problem. They don't keep coming to you and saying, by the way, can we just steal 600 again? You know,
Hmm.
they start figuring it out. Sometimes they bully you, and then having a mentor is very, very helpful because they
Hmm.
say, if you don't change net income to whatever, you're fired. That's a lot of pressure, especially on a new hire, where
Yeah.
somebody hands you a coat and says, get the heck out. You have to have some seniority to look back at them and go, are you done yet? And they stare at you, and then they put it back on the hook and they leave and they go, you weren't very helpful. I go, yeah, I know. Then you
Yeah.
move on and you say,
Yeah.
I'm going to pretend that never happened. Like you're outing them. Or if it happens a lot, you need to be in another organization. So, but it is so helpful. The first time that somebody asked me to do the wrong thing, I immediately was with my mentor going, what do I do here? Because you're new hire, you're vulnerable, you can
Hmm.
be easily fired. You have no um, gravitas, right, to bring to the situation. So,
Yeah.
but my mentor was very, very helpful in telling me how to address it. So I hope it never happens to you or anybody that's listening, but it might.
For sure. So it's important to have some sort of a sounding board, somebody that you can talk to, especially in those high critical situations, because when those things happen, many times the way the person trying to get you to commit the fraud succeeds is because you feel alone and isolated. And
Yes,
so,
and they usually minimize it like, "This is no big deal. Why are you freaking out?" Right? They
mhm,
minimize it like something's wrong with you. So it's nice to,
yeah,
and it's also nice to rehearse in advance with my students. I tell them, if somebody's asked me to do the wrong thing all the time, now let's rehearse, right? So we'll role play and rehearse, and that's helpful with the mentee too.
so I'm thinking about mentors now. We talked about a little bit about mentees. Let's say somebody's listening to this conversation and says, you know what? I want to be a mentor. Do you think they should be a mentee first before they become a mentor? Or can you just be a mentor? Are there qualities you should look at in yourself to be a good mentor?
Well, if you've been a mentee and you've had a good mentor, you've got a good role model. But I don't think you have to have been a mentee. I think you want to be a good encourager.
Hmm.
You want to be consistent and keep showing up. You don't want to overwhelm or boss your mentee around. So you want to maybe have one goal for the next meeting and pick up how did
Yeah.
that go. And then if they didn't listen to any of the things that you said, you could certainly check and say, what do you think it was about those that didn't work out? Right. So try to help them to be thinking through. This just happened yesterday. I had a mentee come who told me 2 years ago, this is my main goal, this goal A, and nothing's happened on goal A for however many 6 meetings. And I said, how's goal A? Oh, I'm going to get to it. I just had this other thing happen, this really great thing here, great thing here. Great. I was like, really great, but thought you were interested in goal A. Well, I am. I said, well, you keep chasing all these other minor goals. What do you think's going on? Right. And so you help them become more self-aware by just asking questions and helping them try to listen and reflect back. I thought you were interested. Well, it's changed. Okay. Now the goal's changed. Or no, the goal hasn't changed. I just keep getting distracted. Okay. Sometimes you have to help them learn how to say no,
Hmm.
especially new folks in the career. They want to say yes to every project, and all of a sudden they yes themselves into failure. And so that was happening with one of my other mentees recently. Just accepted every assignment, loved it all, and of course ended up in a big mess. So I said, well, you have to learn to say, I could never say no. I would be impossible. I said, well, then you can't say no. You've got to say something else. How about say, I'd love to do that. Let me schedule it.
Yeah.
I could do it starting 2 years from now, unless you take this away, right? So that worked. So sometimes if you have a little bit of flexibility and caring, right, you have to show an interest in care and follow up. So I love it. I love it. But
You
you
said,
go in not knowing you're going to get anything back, but then you do end up getting so much back, but you don't know that. You can't know that till later. You have to invest first.
you have to invest first. See, you have to, plant the seed first and to see the fruit
Yeah,
grow, right? That
step
same
out.
kind of analogy.
You have to step out. Mm.
Maybe you can share just some professional personal benefits that you've received from being a mentor.
Well, I mean, seeing them grow and succeed is
Yeah.
terrific. Of course, you and I talked earlier about how right now my boss is a former mentee. And so
Hmm.
that's from 40 years ago. So you never know when something like that is going to happen. I was in an interview one time, the only time I ever worked for a SEC company, and I did get the job. But in the interview, the name of my mentor came up, and that ended up apparently swinging the decision that if that person was my mentor, I had the job, and that was the end of the conversation. So, like, wow, that was
Wow.
abrupt. So, but I had no idea because he hadn't been my mentor for decades.
Hmm.
You just you don't do it for that, but it's just sometimes life comes around full circle.
Hmm.
Sometimes they've helped me in. I will say that many times I get into reverse mentoring, which I didn't is just good luck. So maybe when the George Floyd disaster happened, I had three mentees where that was part of their life at that time. And I remember calling them up and saying, you got to teach me about this. You have to help me understand how I can be a good person and a good professional right now with
Hmm.
you. And I learned a ton. I learned a ton. So I've learned a lot from my mentees, both as they grow and also as they have expertise that I know nothing about. And so it is nice to ask something of the mentees because they're less likely to feel self-conscious about asking something of you. So when I ask my new students, I've got a new batch of freshmen coming in. Did you ever feel like leaving the school and why? Help me understand, put your freshman head on and help me understand today's freshmen that did high school in the basement with dad. Help me. So, and they will, and then they're less self-conscious about asking something of you because they've helped you.
Hmm.
I would say that's even more true of kind of first generation students or students that have come from a background where they didn't get much help. The more you show that you can help me, then maybe they'd be more likely to reach out and say, hey, could you help me here?
You just mentioned reverse mentoring. Can maybe you define that for our audience?
I wish I could. It's the term I think I made it up, but there's probably a more elegant term for that. But
Hmm.
it's where you recognize that you're good at some things and they're good at other things, even if you have shared interest or a shared profession or part of your career story overlaps. that sometimes you want to ask them something or get a second opinion about something because you're not entirely sure. So my mentor of 40 years told me just 3 weeks ago and said, I don't understand why they're not happy about this thing. I think this thing is great. What do you think? And I told her, I think it was terrible. And here's why. It's like, oh, I didn't. Oh. So, it that's very helpful. And I called that person however many times and said, I don't understand why they don't like this thing that I think it's great. And she'll say, because of this. And I go, oh.
Mhm.
So it's just really nice to have that. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing if you take the time to build it.
Well, yeah, it's taking time to build it, taking the time to be self-aware enough that, hey, I may not understand something completely. And instead of making assumptions or making judgments based on my limited ignorance, I should actually teach myself something and learn something about it. And so that's a huge thing
Yeah.
that I think we could all benefit from.
Well, sometimes we ask somebody in our personal life, a spouse, a brother, a parent, whatever it is, a neighbor who we think, and they may not have the requisite experience to really be a good sounding board, whereas a
Yeah.
mentor might. And mentors should be safe, right? If I don't like the advice that my husband gives me, he might wonder why I didn't take his perfectly lovely advice. Whereas with the mentor, I don't have to worry about the pouty face.
So let's talk a little bit about self-awareness. At what point did you realize, hey, I need to be self-aware? Were you always self-aware? Did you have to build that in yourself?
I was not self-aware. My first mentor had to make me self-aware. And
Okay.
this first time that he told me, it came on really strong, but I guess I needed it. I think I criticized something and I don't remember what I criticized. I just remember
hmm
him looking at me and saying, you have to stop being mean. So, and so then he explained himself why that was. And
Hmm.
I didn't realize that I was that critical and critical in a very quick way. Like I didn't let somebody fully elaborate something and I immediately cut him off at the knees, never intending to do that. I thought, well, I've already found the flaw in your situation, so I'll save you the time and we'll move on to the next thing. But it wasn't playing out like that. Here in my head, I thought, this is terrific, but it was not terrific. So anyway, no, he was, and that helped me to stay on the mentoring thing because I thought I would never have figured that out because I thought it was genius and everybody else thinks I'm a jerk. And
Yeah.
so that was very helpful early in my career to go, it's not what you think, it's what they think. So I asked more questions and I started asking more questions. How does this come across? That kind of thing. And so
hmm
it made me realize I have a blind spot. I have many blind spots, but that was the first time I remember it being revealed to me so clearly. So anyway, that was a real gift that he
Well, even
gave
after
me.
all these years of mentoring and being a mentee, are you still learning stuff about yourself?
Yes. Oh, yes. I was in a mentee meeting yesterday, and everything that I said, the mentee disagreed with. And at the end, I said, this is so fantastic. I would never have thought of that at all, any of that.
hmm
And the mentee was like the same. I feel the same way. This was the best meeting ever because of the fact that we didn't agree so we could talk it out. And so I could learn about myself. Why is it that you avoid those situations? So why do you keep running in front of the bus? Why do you actually like those situations? And so he could explain himself. I could explain myself, but we actually bonded over it. It was really great. So yeah, I'm still learning about myself for sure.
That's awesome. And I love that you have that willingness to learn because it seems like to be a good mentor or even a good mentee, you have to kind of be open. You have to be willing to trust. You have to be willing to kind of be vulnerable in a lot of ways and be willing to have uncomfortable conversations because you can't say, hey, that was mean to somebody who you're not willing to have an uncomfortable conversation with. And what does that look like as you're kind of building up your skills to be a mentor?
Well, that's not the first conversation probably you would have, right? You would have to
True.
have built some trust. But that wouldn't have been the opening salvo from that particular
Of
person.
course.
I don't know. I think some of it is good luck. And also, if you're willing to be vulnerable and not judgmental, the chances are better that they will be too. So, just have to build it. It doesn't happen with everybody,
hmm
but if you don't do it with anybody, it will never happen with anybody. Start,
Yeah, you got to start. So I
try
wanted
it.
to, you got to try it. You got to try it, put yourself out there, and you're going to make mistakes, right? Nothing's going
Some
to
of
be
them won't
perfect right
work.
away.
Some
Yeah.
of them won't. So if the first three don't work, don't stop.
Yeah.
Try to figure out why they didn't work. Ask somebody. I tried to be a mentee to these 3 people and it didn't work. Here's what I tried. What do you think I did wrong? That could be your mentor, right? Somebody who's interested in that and wants to talk about
Hmm.
that, start there.
Yeah.
Solve that problem first.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that. Maybe I'm sure you've had times where you've tried to do the mentor mentee role and something didn't work out. Like, what does that look
Mhm.
like? And how do you kind of like, okay, like recognize this isn't working. Let's move our separate ways.
Yeah. So that happened pretty recently. I had somebody that wasn't responding to, I thought this person needed mentoring. I thought I was the right person. So anyway, I did some reaching out and got nothing. And I ran into the person in the hallway and I said, hey, am I doing something wrong? Are you not interested in mentoring? How can I help you find somebody that would like to talk to you about this thing? You know what? Help me, help me, you know, figure it out. And he said, no, you're not doing anything wrong. You're great. I said, well, how is that even possible? We haven't met. How could I be doing great? Right. When all I've done is initiate, and I get
Yeah.
nothing from you. Like that doesn't, oh, right. So that was his self awareness moment, right? Like, oh,
Hmm.
I'm not doing my part. And he did a big turnaround. I don't know that it was that. It probably was that plus 7 other things. I might have been the tipping point, but all of a sudden he started to click and do some things that he needed to be doing. And I haven't had a chance to follow up to see what else is going on with him. So sometimes you're in the right place at the right time,
Hmm.
or maybe he was just ready. But he
Yeah.
probably needed somebody else. He probably needed somebody else. But at least I hope he got it. Hope he got the right, somebody that he could respond to.
And I'm sure it's making sure being aware enough to say, I'm not going to take this personally that this relationship didn't work.
No, that's right. That's right. So, but if you take everything personally, it's going to be a harder life.
That's just in general with everything, I'm sure.
That's just in general, right? Yeah. So I know that's hard, but yeah, try to do something else.
For sure. So can you tell me what it's been like, being a mentor over all these years? And have you been able to learn things and become a better leader because of it?
Well, I think probably in many ways, and maybe a better person,
Okay.
maybe a more empathetic, effective person. Because when it doesn't work or when it gets off the rails, I learn to diagnose and fix, or I try to. And same
Hmm.
thing with the mentee. When it doesn't work and it goes off the rails and you finally find your mentor, why did that not work? Those other things I tried, right? And you get some feedback. And feedback is the breakfast of champions. So when my mentees give me feedback, and I do try to reverse mentor and ask them for feedback, I'm sure that they've all helped me be more effective as a leader, as a
Hmm.
contributor, as a person, as a community member, you name it. I've tried as best I can.
Yeah. So we're looking at,
It's in that
go ahead.
it's in that box of important but not urgent. Are you familiar with that quadrant? Okay. So that's where mentoring lives. And sometimes my mentees are so intense in the other boxes that they can't ever find time to get into that box, which is where development happens. And
Hmm.
so sometimes that's mentoring number one. And I'm blessed for whatever reason that that box attracts me. And I block time to be in that box.
Hmm.
So if you can't ever open up that box, I don't think you can be a mentor or a mentee.
Yeah.
And you might just be too
You might just be too busy, and that's a bigger issue that you need to kind of work through.
right. So now we have to talk about how to say no, right? We have to have that other
Yeah.
conversation. So I've done a lot of mentoring of people that report to me.
Hmm.
And so that probably has helped my leadership.
So let's talk a little bit about that. The difference between like mentoring somebody who's reporting to you versus mentoring somebody who works at a different organization. What does that look like? And how can you like what do you think are there certain situations where one is better over the other, or it just depends?
So when you're inside the organization, you have a lot of important information that impacts that person's ability to be promoted or to move to
Yeah.
another area or to develop because you're aware of the other opportunities. So when I was hiring, I was often hiring straight out of college, and then I would mentor them till they were basically my counterpart in another part of the organization, or they would be hired away by treasury or one of manufacturing units or whatever. They would go on to their happiness place. So you have a lot of information and you can share information within the organization about that developing talent. So that's a special kind of mentoring situation where you have very pertinent information for them.
Hmm.
Outside the organization, though, you can do more personal mentoring where it's safe to much of the mentoring early in the career is because somebody's done something. So my boss yelled at me for not knowing how to do it, but they never showed me how to do it. What do I do now? So there's a lot of, that kind of a thing. If you're inside an organization, you don't really want to complain about your boss, certainly can't complain about your boss to your boss, right? Or at least that doesn't go so well. So having somebody outside the organization that can sort of coach you on, okay, is it that your boss had one bad day or do they always yell at you? How many often does this happen? Is there any possibility that you could have looked something up and they might be right? That you're
Yeah,
asking too many questions, some of which you could have solved for yourself, right? So you can explore with them in a way that's independent of organization. So there's advantages to both. I think it's nice. That's why it's ideal if you have one inside and one outside. But
that makes sense.
you have to make that happen.
Yeah, you do. So when I think about, in the accounting profession, it's in mentoring relationships. It seems like they can support, new people coming into the profession trying to get there. But also it seems like from what you've been saying, people who've been in the profession a while, they can learn a lot from the kids just coming out of college because they have this new knowledge. And so it can be a mutually beneficial relationship. Do you think that, as you're growing in your profession that we should hey, I've been in this profession for 20 years. Maybe I should look for a mentee so I can help bring up is that something that should be important to professionals as they grow in their career?
I would encourage folks to do that unless they have the kind of temperament where they're just not going to be successful in it. But
Yeah.
it's a very, very good for the profession to help them to get certified, to help them navigate this first. Their expectations are usually very off in the beginning because they really don't know what to expect, especially if they come from an environment where nobody's got a college degree or nobody's been in a professional role or whatever. So they're completely green. So it's nice to help somebody navigate those expectations. And
Hmm.
they may be a future employee. You never know.
Yeah, they may be. So, Carol, as we wrap up this conversation, I just wanted to see, are there any lasting pointers that you want to just leave with our audience as they may have been listening, they're trying to figure things out, and these are some things you want them to remember as they're walking away?
We're having arguments about AI. I'm sure that other people are too.
Hmm.
Fruitful, positive ones, but we're trying to figure it out. Other people trying to figure it out. And one of the things that we keep coming back to is that emotional quotient will always matter.
Mm.
Those soft skills, they're not in fashion. Again, they've never left fashion, right? So a good mentor can help you develop your EQ, your emotional intelligence, and a good mentee can learn as well. So I just was getting ready to start mentoring my freshman class, and I put EQ in the Amazon search. 50,000 hits, 50,000 different books with that
Wow.
in the title, emotional intelligence. So if you want to up your EQ, this is just a wonderful, wonderful way to do it. And you don't know the prize at the end of the tunnel.
Hmm.
Everybody go out, up your EQ.
I think that's a great way to end it, Carol. Thank you so much. Everybody go out there and up your EQ and connect with Share.
Let's do it. All right. Well, it's nice to talk to you.
This has been Count Me In, IMA's podcast, providing you with the latest perspectives of thought leaders from the accounting and finance profession. If you like what you heard and you'd like to be counted in for more relevant accounting and finance education, visit IMA's website at www.imanet.org.